The crystal walls of Confederacy Command Center gleamed under the bright lights of 7 different suns. Admiral Vextar stood before the massive viewing screen, his translucent body catching and reflecting the light like a living prism. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 6 other alien species watched with quiet respect. They had good reason to respect him. For 300 years, no enemy had lasted more than 3 days against the Zephyrian Confederacy. The Aqualian resistance has been eliminated, reported Commander Thex, her forearms working quickly over control panels. Total time from first contact to surrender was 14 minutes and 37 seconds. Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. The Aqualians have been a peaceful species, living in floating cities above their ocean worlds. They had tried to defend themselves when the Confederacy came to claim their territory. It had been a foolish choice. The Confederacy always won. Show me the battlefield footage. The Admiral commanded, the main screen filled with images from space. 12 massive Confederacy dreadnoughts hung in the void like deadly flowers, their hulls glowing with energy shields. Below them, the Aqualian homeworld burned. What had once been beautiful floating cities were now smoking ruins scattered across the planet's endless oceans. The Aqualians used kinetic weapons. Commander Thex continued. Primitive railguns and missile systems. Our energy shields stopped everything they fired at us. Their plasma cannons were generations behind our technology. We lost no ships and took no damage. Admiral Vextar's crystalline features showed satisfaction. This was how it always went. The Confederacy had perfected the art of war. Their plasma weapons could melt through any known armor. Their energy shields could stop any attack. Their ships were fast, powerful, and beautiful. Most importantly, they had learned to work together. The Zephyrian provided the technology and leadership. The Molden gave them their incredible strength and endurance. The Veek contributed their speed and reflexes. The Thornax brought their weapons expertise. The Quillen added their shields and defense systems. The Nexery provided intelligence and communications. Finally, the Boardhack gave them their massive industrial capacity to build more ships than any enemy could match. Together, they were unbeatable. Any word from the outer colonies? Asked General Craw, the Molden representative. His rocky skin glowed red with satisfaction at another easy victory. All quiet, sir, replied the communications officer. No signs of new threats or unknown species. Admiral Vextar walked to the center of the chamber. The other species representatives turned their attention to him. When a Zephyrian admiral spoke, everyone listened. For 3 centuries, we have brought order to this galaxy, he began, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. We have shown dozens of species the benefits of joining our confederacy. Those who chose to fight us learned a simple truth. War is about technology, strategy, and overwhelming force. We have perfected all 3. The representatives nodded in agreement. They had seen the evidence over and over again. The Confederacy won because they were simply better at fighting than anyone else they had ever met. No species has ever lasted more than 72 hours against our combined fleets, the Admiral continued. Most surrender within hours. The wise ones surrender without firing a shot. They understand that resistance is pointless. Commander Thex looked up from her controls with a puzzled expression. Sir, I'm getting some unusual readings from our long-range sensors. Admiral Vextar turned toward her. What kind of readings? There's a large object approaching from the outer rim. Very large. It's moving at incredible speed, but it doesn't match any ship design in our databases. The Admiral's crystalline features showed mild interest, but no concern. Unknown ships appeared sometimes. They were usually scouts from new species that had just discovered space travel. The Confederacy had a standard procedure for dealing with them. How large? He asked. Commander Thex checked her readings twice before answering. Approximately 2 kilometers long and half a kilometer wide. The mass reading suggests it's incredibly dense. Much denser than any ship we've encountered. General Craw laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. 2 kilometers? That's bigger than our dreadnoughts. What primitive species would build something so massive and clumsy? Probably compensating for weak technology with size. suggested Captain Yith, the Thornax weapon specialist. We've seen it before. Species that can't build effective weapons just make everything bigger. Admiral Vextar nodded thoughtfully, set an intercept course. Take the First Fleet. 12 heavy cruisers should be more than enough to handle one oversized ship, no matter what species built it. Yes, sir, Commander Thex responded. Estimated contact in 6 hours. As the bridge crew began preparations for another routine encounter, Admiral Vextar felt a familiar satisfaction that came with absolute superiority. In 6 hours, they would meet this unknown ship. Its crew would see the power of the Confederacy and would either surrender immediately or be destroyed quickly. It had been the same pattern for 300 years. Nothing ever changed. The Admiral looked out at the stars beyond the viewing screen. Somewhere out there, an unknown species had built a large ship and thought it could travel freely through Confederacy space. They would soon learn that the galaxy belonged to the strong, and no one was stronger than the 7 species that had learned to fight as one. Admiral Vextar began planning his standard speech for new species. He would offer them a choice: join the Confederacy and enjoy its protection, or resist and face destruction. Most chose wisely. He had no reason to think this time would be any different. The crystal walls of the command center continued to gleam under the light of 7 suns, reflecting the confidence of a military force that had never known defeat. In 6 hours, they would add another victory to their long list of conquests. At least, that was what Admiral Vextar believed as he prepared for what he thought would be just another routine encounter with an inferior species. The bridge of the UESN Defiance hummed with quiet activity as the massive battleship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Captain Sarachin stood in the center of the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. Around her, 847 crew members worked at their stations with the calm efficiency that came from years of training. "Drop complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. "We are now at the edge of the Kepler sector." Captain Chin nodded. They had been traveling for 6 months to reach this distant part of space, carrying humanity's first diplomatic mission to make contact with galactic civilization. Earth scientists had detected radio signals from this region that proved intelligent life existed beyond their solar system. After decades of preparation, humanity was finally ready to introduce themselves to their galactic neighbors. "Any signs of local traffic?" the captain asked. Commander Rodriguez, her tactical officer, frowned as he studied his instruments. "I'm picking up debris fields, Captain, large ones, and I'm detecting traces of weapons fire." "Weapons fire? From whom?" "Unknown, sir. But the debris appears to be artificial. Pieces of destroyed ships or stations." Captain Chun felt a chill run down her spine. "Show me." The main screen filled with an image of space that should have been empty. Instead, twisted metal and strange materials drifted in scattered clouds. The debris glowed with residual heat, suggesting the destruction had happened recently. "Computer analysis indicates the debris came from at least 40 different vessels," Commander Rodriguez continued. "The designs don't match anything in our databases, but they appear to be civilian in nature. No heavy armor or weapon systems." 40 ships destroyed? Captain Chin moved closer to the screen. "When?" "Based on cooling patterns and dispersal rates, approximately 8 hours ago." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. They had come hoping to make peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Instead, they found evidence of a massive battle where 40 ships had been destroyed. "Captain," called out Ensign Park from the communication station, "I'm picking up faint distress signals from the debris field. They're in an unknown language, but the computer is working on translation." "Put it on speaker as soon as you have something," Captain Chin ordered. While they waited, she studied the tactical display more carefully. The debris field stretched across hundreds of kilometers, but the pattern was strange. All the destroyed ships seemed to have been in defensive positions around what appeared to be a planet. They had been protecting their home. "Translation coming through now, Captain," Ensign Park announced. Static filled the bridge, followed by a weak alien voice speaking in heavily accented English. This is emergency broadcast. Aqualian Defense Fleet, we are under attack by Confederacy forces. They demand surrender. We cannot. Our weapons are useless against their shields. They are destroying our cities. The message cut off into static. Then came another voice, different but equally desperate. All Aqualian vessels, this is command. The Confederacy has given us one final warning. Surrender, or they will destroy our homeworld. We cannot fight them. Their technology is too advanced. We must. Silence. Captain Chun felt anger building in her chest. She had been a military officer for 20 years, and she recognized the sounds of massacre when she heard them. Analysis of the battle pattern. Commander Rodriguez. Her tactical officer worked quickly over his displays. Based on debris distribution and damage patterns, it appears 40 lightly armed ships try to defend a planet against a much smaller but more advanced force. The defenders were completely outmatched. The attack was systematic and thorough. Any sign of the attackers? Yes, Captain. Long-range sensors show 12 large vessels approximately 200,000 kilometers from our position. They appear to be moving in formation. Captain Chin studied the tactical display. 12 ships against 40, and they had won without taking any apparent damage. Either the Aqualians had been incredibly weak, or these Confederacy forces were very dangerous. What can you tell me about the 12 ships? They're large, Captain. Each one is about 800 meters long. They're showing massive energy signatures, particularly around what appear to be shield generators and weapon systems. Their technology appears to be based on directed energy weapons and plasma systems. Captain Chin nodded thoughtfully. Humanity had developed differently. Earth's constant wars had led them down the path of kinetic weapons and dense matter armor, railguns, missiles, and metal that could survive anything. They had learned that the best defense was armor too thick to penetrate and weapons too powerful to stop. Are they aware of us? Not yet, Captain. We're at maximum sensor range. But they will detect us if we move closer. The bridge crew waited for orders. Captain Chin studied the debris field one more time, thinking about the desperate voices they had heard. 40 ships full of families, trying to defend their home, all destroyed by an enemy that seemed to enjoy overwhelming superiority. Open a channel to the 12 ships, she ordered. Captain? Commander Rodriguez looked surprised. Are you sure? We don't know their intentions. I know their actions, she replied firmly. They just destroyed 40 civilian ships and threatened to destroy a planet. That tells me everything I need to know about their intentions. Channel open, Captain. Captain Chin stepped forward. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Starship Defiance. To the Confederacy vessels in this system, you will stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection regarding your attack on civilian targets. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Commander Rodriguez stepped closer and lowered his voice. Captain, there are 12 of them and only one of us. They just destroyed 40 ships. Captain Chen's expression was calm but determined. Commander, those 40 ships were civilian vessels with families aboard. The Confederacy attacked without provocation and committed what amounts to mass murder. As representatives of Earth, we cannot ignore that. Our response came through the communication system. The voice was arrogant and amused. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrin Confederacy. You will identify your species and submit to inspection. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. Captain Chin smiled grimly. The alien's tone reminded her of bullies she had dealt with throughout her military career. Admiral Vextar, you have committed an act of war against a peaceful species. Stand down immediately, or we will consider you a hostile force. Laughter came through the speaker. You will consider us hostile? You are one primitive vessel against the most powerful fleet in known space. Surrender now, and we may allow your species to join the Confederacy. Resist, and you will share the fate of the Aqualians. Captain Chin looked around the bridge at her crew. They were nervous, but ready. Humanity had not traveled across the galaxy to watch bullies destroy innocent people. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are about to engage a hostile force that has just committed genocide against a peaceful species. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and show them what humans do to those who prey on the innocent." She turned back to the communication station. "Admiral Vextar, you have one opportunity to surrender. After what I've seen here, I'm not inclined to be generous." Admiral Vextar stared at his communication display in disbelief. In 300 years, no species had ever spoken to Confederacy with such bold defiance. This unknown captain had not only refused to surrender, but had actually demanded that he surrender instead. "Did that primitive just threaten us?" asked General Craw, his rocky features showing amusement. "It would appear so," Admiral Vextar replied slowly. He studied the tactical display, showing the unknown ship, 2 kilometers long, built from what appeared to be simple metal alloys, showing no energy shields whatsoever. It looked like something a barely spacefaring species might build. "Admiral, detailed scans of the unknown vessel are complete," reported Commander Thex. "The ship appears to be constructed primarily of dense metallic compounds, titanium, tungsten, and several alloys we don't recognize. The armor plating is extremely thick, much thicker than necessary for a ship that size." "How thick?" "Approximately 4 meters of solid metal on all surfaces, sir. The design is unusual. It appears to be built to absorb tremendous amounts of physical punishment." Admiral Vextar nodded thoughtfully. Some primitive species did build their ships with thick armor, not understanding that modern weapons could simply blast through any amount of metal. It was an inefficient approach that showed they had not yet developed proper shield technology. "What about their weapons?" "The scans show what appear to be kinetic systems, sir. Railguns, missile launchers, and some kind of projectile cannons. No energy weapons detected. Their technology appears to be several generations behind ours." Captain Yith, the Thornax weapon specialist, laughed. "Kinetic weapons? What are they planning to do? Throw rocks at us?" The bridge crew shared his amusement. Energy shields could easily deflect any solid projectile, no matter how fast it was moving. The Confederacy had learned long ago that energy weapons were the only effective way to fight in space. "Open a channel," Admiral Vextar commanded. "I want to give the species one final chance to avoid destruction." When the connection was established, he spoke with the authority of 3 centuries of victories. "Unknown Captain, I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Confederacy. You are clearly new to galactic warfare. Your ship is primitive, and your weapons are obsolete. I offer you one final opportunity to surrender before I demonstrate why the Confederacy has never lost a battle." The human captain's response was immediate and infuriating. "Admiral, I've seen your demonstration. 40 civilian ships destroyed by overwhelming force. I'm not impressed. Stand down or prepare to be fired upon." Admiral Vextar felt his crystalline features flush with anger. This primitive species needed to learn respect for their betters. "Very well. You have chosen destruction over wisdom." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their engines with a demonstration strike. Use minimal power. I want to disable them without destroying them completely. Perhaps when they see how helpless they are, they will reconsider." "Target locked, Admiral. Firing." The Confederacy formation moved into perfect attack position. Energy shields blazed alive around all 12 ships, creating a beautiful display of power and technology. The lead vessel's main plasma cannon swiveled toward the human ship and fired. A brilliant beam of superheated energy lanced across space, striking the human battleship directly amidships. The plasma burst was powerful enough to melt through 50 meters of standard starship armor. Against an unshielded vessel, it should have been devastating. When the energy dissipated, Admiral Vextar expected to see a crippled ship with its engines destroyed and its hull breached. Instead, the human battleship hung in space exactly as before, showing no damage whatsoever. "What?" Admiral Vextar stared at his display in confusion. "Sir, the plasma strike had no apparent effect," reported the weapons officer. "The target appears to be undamaged. That's impossible. Scan for damage. Commander Thex worked frantically over her instruments. Sir, I'm detecting a slight temperature increase on the target's hull where the plasma struck. The metal absorbed the energy and dispersed it throughout the armor structure. But there's no penetration, no significant damage. Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare: uncertainty. How thick did you say their armor was? 4 meters of dense metal alloys, sir. But that shouldn't matter. Plasma weapons burn through any material. On the human ship's bridge, Captain Chen studied the damage reports with satisfaction. Status report, Commander Rodriguez. Minor temperature increase on hull sections 7 through 12. The armor absorbed energy just like it was designed to. No penetration, no damage to internal systems. Captain Chen nodded. Earth shipbuilders had learned their craft in the asteroid belts, where ships had to survive impacts with massive chunks of rock traveling at incredible speeds. They had built a defiance to survive the worst punishment that space could deliver. "Shall we return fire, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Torres from the weapons station. Captain Chen looked at the formation of alien ships on her tactical display. They were arranged in a perfect textbook pattern, clearly confident in their superiority. Their energy shields glowed brightly, probably designed to stop energy weapons like the plasma beam they had just fired. "Not yet, Lieutenant. Let's see what else they try." Back on the Confederacy flagship, Admiral Vextar struggled to understand what had just happened. In 300 years, no enemy had ever survived a direct plasma strike without shields. "Increase power to maximum," he ordered. "Target the same location. Full intensity." "Sir, that level of power could destroy a dreadnought," warned the weapons officer. "Fire." The second plasma burst was 3 times as powerful as the first. It struck the human ship like a miniature star, bathing that section of space in brilliant energy. The beam lasted for 10 full seconds, pouring enough energy into the target to vaporize a small moon. When it ended, the human ship was still there, still undamaged, still waiting. Commander Thex's voice was shaky as she reported. "Sir, target shows slightly higher temperature readings, but still no structural damage. Their armor is somehow absorbing and dispersing energy faster than we can deliver it." Admiral Vextar stared at the human ship, feeling something he had never felt before in his military career. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Confederacy fleet had fired its most powerful weapons at an enemy and achieved nothing. "Admiral," came the human captain's voice over the communication channel. Her tone was calm, almost conversational. "Are you finished with your demonstration? Because if you are, it's our turn." The bridge of the Confederacy flagship fell silent. General Kraw's rocky features showed confusion. Captain Yitha's weapon displays flickered as he tried to understand how kinetic weapons could pose any threat to energy shields. Admiral Vextar realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare might be wrong. This unknown species had just shrugged off the most powerful weapons in known space, as if they were harmless. What kind of enemy had they encountered? Captain Chen looked around the bridge of the Defiance one final time. Her crew was ready. The aliens had shown their hand, and now it was time to show them humanity's answer to 3 centuries of galactic bullying. "Lieutenant Torres, bring all weapon systems online. Commander Rodriguez, prepare drone deployment. All stations, this is not a drill." The massive human battleship began to transform. Hidden panels slid open along its hull, revealing rows of railgun batteries that had been concealed during their approach. Missile tubes extended from the ship's sides like the quills of an angry porcupine. Deep within the ship's core, nuclear reactors that had been running at minimum power surged to full capacity. "Weapons hot, Captain," reported Lieutenant Torres. "All railgun batteries loaded and ready, nuclear warheads armed and standing by. Drone bays ready for launch," added Commander Rodriguez. 200 combat drones prepped and waiting. Captain Chen studied the alien formation on her tactical display. 12 ships arranged in a perfect attack pattern, their energy shields creating a web of protective energy around the fleet. They had probably used this same formation for 300 years against enemies who fought the same way they did. Unfortunately for them, humans had learned to fight very differently. Target the lead ship with Railgun Battery Alpha. Fire when ready. The Defiance's main railgun spoke with a voice like thunder. A tungsten carbide projectile the size of a small car accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light and crossed the distance between the ships in seconds. Admiral Vextar watched in confusion as something small and dark approached his flagship. His energy shields blazed alive, designed to deflect or absorb any energy-based attack. The shields had never failed before. The tungsten projectile passed through the energy shields as if they didn't exist. Energy shields were designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons, not solid objects moving at incredible velocities. The projectile struck the Confederacy flagship's hull and punched completely through the ship, creating a hole 3 meters wide from bow to stern. Atmosphere vented into space as the flagship shuddered under the impact. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the ship as primary systems failed. What just happened? Admiral Vextar demanded, pulling himself up from the deck where the impact had thrown him. Sir, we've been hit by some kind of solid projectile. It passed completely through our shields and, primary power is offline, weapons are damaged, and we have multiple hull breaches. Admiral Vextar stared at his displays in shock. One shot from a human ship had crippled his flagship, a flagship that had never taken serious damage in 3 centuries of warfare. All ships, evasive action. Return fire immediately. The Confederacy fleet broke formation, their perfect textbook pattern dissolving into chaos as 11 ships tried to avoid weapons they didn't understand. Plasma beams lanced out toward a human battleship, but Captain Chun was already moving. Full acceleration, helm. Execute evasion pattern Delta. All weapon batteries. Fire at will. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. The human ship moved through space like a boxer dancing around a group of slower opponents. Its railguns fired continuously, sending stream after stream of projectiles through alien shields that might as well have been made of paper. The second Confederacy ship took 3 railgun hits in rapid succession. Its hull cracked like an eggshell, atmosphere and debris venting into the void. The third ship tried to retreat, but ran directly into a spread of human missiles that detonated against its unprotected hull with nuclear fury. Captain, launching drone swarms now, announced Commander Rodriguez. 200 small combat drones poured from hidden bays on the Defiance, each one equipped with its own weapons and guided by artificial intelligence that had been refined through decades of human warfare. The aliens had never seen anything like them. The drones swarmed around the Confederacy ships like angry insects, too small and fast for the large plasma weapons to target effectively. They attached themselves to alien hulls and detonated shaped charges that punched holes in critical systems. General Craw's ship, trying to bring its heavy weapons to bear on the human battleship, suddenly found itself blind and deaf as drones destroyed its sensor arrays and communication systems. Without coordination, the Confederacy fleet became a collection of individual ships fighting desperately for survival. Sir, we're being jammed, reported Commander Thex from the damaged flagship. The human ship is broadcasting some kind of signal that's interfering with our communications. Admiral Vextar realized that the humans were not just using different weapons. They were using completely different tactics. Electronic warfare, drone swarms, kinetic weapons that ignored energy defenses, and movement patterns that seemed designed to confuse and disorient rather than simply overpower. The 4th and 5th Confederacy ships collided with each other as they tried to avoid the human battleship's unexpected movements, their captains unable to coordinate without proper communications. The Defiance swept past the wreckage and targeted the 6th ship with a weapon the aliens had never seen before. Gravitational lance charging, reported Lieutenant Torres. Target locked. Fire. A focused beam of gravitational energy struck the 6th ship and began tearing apart at the molecular level. The aliens watched in horror as their vessel simply came apart, its atoms scattered across space by forces they didn't understand. Captain Chun had learned something important about galactic warfare in the first few minutes of battle. The aliens were good at fighting enemies who used the same technology and tactics they did. But they had no idea how to handle an opponent who fought completely differently. Commander Rodriguez, prepare the scrap cannon. Captain? Her tactical officer looked puzzled. Target the wreckage from their destroyed ships. Use our gravitational manipulators to accelerate the debris toward their remaining vessels. It was a tactic that would have been impossible for most species to even imagine. The humans took the wreckage of destroyed alien ships and hurled the twisted metal at the surviving vessels like massive bullets. The Confederacy's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against chunks of their own destroyed ships moving at incredible velocity. 3 more alien vessels were battered into submission by their own wreckage. The survivors found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to turn everything in space into a weapon. Within 2 hours of the first shot, 11 of the 12 Confederacy ships were either destroyed, disabled, or drifting helplessly with their crews, evacuating in escape pods. Only Admiral Vextar's flagship remained partially operational, its engines damaged but still functional. Admiral, came Captain Chen's voice over the communication channel. I believe you wanted to demonstrate the futility of resistance. How do you think that worked out? Admiral Vextar looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His mighty fleet was destroyed. 3 centuries of unquestioned superiority had ended in 2 hours of combat against a single human ship. How? He whispered into the communicator. How is this possible? We are the most advanced military force in known space. Captain Chen's response was gentle but firm. Admiral, you're the most advanced military force in your space. You've been fighting enemies who developed the same way you did, using the same technologies and tactics. You've never faced an enemy that learned to fight differently. What kind of world creates warriors like you? There was a pause before Captain Chen answered. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of humanity's long and violent history. The kind of world where we had to learn that peace is only possible when you're too dangerous to attack. You've spent 3 centuries conquering species that couldn't defend themselves. Today, you met one that could. News of the Battle of Kepler's sector spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within 72 hours, every inhabited system had heard the impossible story. A single human battleship had destroyed the most powerful fleet in known space. The Confederacy, undefeated for 3 centuries, had been broken in 2 hours. Captain Chen sat in her ready room aboard the Defiance, reviewing the flood of communications that had begun arriving as word spread. Messages came from dozens of species that had been living under Confederacy rule for generations. Some were messages of thanks. Others were requests for help. All of them carried the same underlying theme. Hope. Captain. Commander Rodriguez entered the room. Admiral Vextar is requesting permission to come aboard. He says he wants to discuss terms. Captain Chen looked up from her displays. Through her viewport, she could see the wreckage of the Confederacy fleet drifting in space. Only the flagship remained intact, limping along on backup power with a skeleton crew. The proud admiral who had boasted of 3 centuries of victories was now asking to negotiate. Permission granted, Commander. Have him escorted to conference room A. And Rodriguez? Make sure our security team understands that he's not a prisoner. He's a defeated enemy who wants to talk. There's a difference. An hour later, Captain Chen sat across a polished metal table from Admiral Vextar. The crystalline alien looked older somehow, his translucent features dulled by defeat and loss. Behind him stood 2 of his surviving officers, their various alien features showing exhaustion and confusion. Captain Chen, Admiral Vextar began slowly. I have been authorized by the Confederacy Council to begin negotiations for a ceasefire agreement. Captain Chen nodded respectfully. I appreciate that, Admiral. But before we talk about ceasefires, I want to know what you plan to do about the species you conquered. The Aqualians, for instance. Admiral Vextar's features showed surprise. The Aqualians? They resisted Confederacy expansion. They were dealt with according to standard protocols. Standard protocols? Captain Chen's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Admiral, you destroyed their entire defense fleet and threatened to destroy their planet. Where I come from, we call that genocide. The alien admiral was quiet for a long moment. Captain, you must understand. The Confederacy has maintained peace in this region for 3 centuries. Sometimes, overwhelming force is the only language that primitive species understand. Captain Chin studied the defeated alien commander. He genuinely believed what he was saying. In his mind, the Confederacy was bringing order to chaos, peace to a violent galaxy. He had never considered that peace forced on others at gunpoint wasn't really peace at all. Admiral, let me tell you something about my species. We've been fighting wars on our homeworld for thousands of years. We know more about violence and warfare than any species should ever have to learn. But do you know what all that fighting taught us? Admiral Vextar shook his head. It taught us that real peace doesn't come from being so strong that you can force others to submit. Real peace comes from being so strong that others choose not to fight you because they know you'll defend yourself, but also because they trust you not to attack them without cause. The Admiral's crystalline features showed confusion. I don't understand the difference. Captain Chin leaned forward. The difference, Admiral, is that the Confederacy conquered species because it could. Humanity defends others because it should. Over the following days, Captain Chin found herself in the strange position of redesigning galactic politics. Messages continued to pour in from species across known space. The Veloxians, who had been enslaved by the Confederacy for 2 centuries, were already in open rebellion. The Kithra Collective had declared independence and was moving to reclaim their stolen worlds. The Thoric Union was demanding reparations for 300 years of exploitation. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing fast. Captain, Ensign Park announced from the communication station, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1. Captain Chin read the message from Earth with growing concern. The discovery of galactic civilization was causing massive changes back home as well. Every human government wanted to know about aliens, alien technology, and alien threats. Some wanted to begin immediate military expansion to support humanity's new role as galactic peacekeepers. Others wanted to establish trade relationships and cultural exchanges. Everyone wanted humanity to take a leading role in galactic affairs. The problem was Captain Chin wasn't sure humanity was ready for that responsibility. Admiral Vextar, she said during their 3rd day of negotiations, I want you to help me understand something. How did the Confederacy maintain control over so many different species? Through strength and organization, the Admiral replied. Each species contributed their best abilities to the whole. Together, we were stronger than any individual race could be alone. But they weren't volunteers, were they? They were conquered and forced to contribute. Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. Most were, yes, but they benefited from Confederacy protection and technology. Captain Chen thought about that for a moment. What if I told you there was a better way? What if species could work together voluntarily, contributing their abilities not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to be part of something larger than themselves? That would be ideal, the Admiral admitted. But how would you maintain order without the threat of force? By proving that cooperation works better than conquest. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Chin stood in the Confederacy Council chambers, addressing representatives from 47 different species. The room that had once been dominated by 7 conquest-minded races now hosted delegates from across the galaxy. We have a choice, she told the assembled beings. We can repeat the mistakes of the past, with one species ruling over others through force. Or we can try something new. We can build a galactic community based on mutual cooperation and respect. Admiral Vextar, sitting in the front row with the other former Confederacy leaders, raised his hand. Captain Chun, what guarantee do we have that this cooperation will maintain peace? What happens when species disagree? What happens when conflict arises? Captain Chin smiled. The same thing that happened when you attacked the Aqualians, Admiral. The difference is that instead of the Confederacy being the aggressor, humanity will be the defender. Any species that chooses aggression over diplomacy will find themselves facing the same fate your fleet met in Kepler Sector. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. A new order was being born, but it would be backed by the same overwhelming force that always maintained galactic peace. The difference was at this time, the force would be used to protect the innocent rather than conquer them. We proposed the establishment of the Terran Galactic Accord, Captain Chin continued. A voluntary alliance of species committed to mutual defense, free trade, and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Membership will be open to any species that agrees to the basic principles of non-aggression and cooperative problem-solving. Over the following months, 43 species signed the accord. The former Confederacy races, humbled by their defeat, became some of the most enthusiastic supporters of the new system. They had learned that there was more than one way to be strong. Captain Chin often thought about Admiral Vextar's question during those early days of the new galactic order. What kind of world creates warriors like humanity? The answer was simple, though not pleasant. Humanity's home world had been a place where survival required constant vigilance, where peace was rare and precious, and where the price of freedom was eternal readiness to defend it. Earth had taught humanity that sometimes you had to fight to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. It had also taught them that the greatest victories were won not through conquest, but through choosing when to fight and when to show mercy. As the Defiance prepared for his long journey home, Captain Chun received one final message from Admiral Vextar. Captain Chun, you asked what kind of world creates warriors like humanity. I believe I understand now. It creates the kind of warriors who fight not for conquest, but for justice, not for power, but for protection. The galaxy is fortunate that when humanity finally reached the stars, you brought your conscience with you. Captain Chin smiled as she deleted the message. The galaxy had spent 3 centuries learning to fear the strong. Now it would learn something new, to trust those who were strong enough to protect others, but wise enough to know when not to use that strength. It would be a long journey, but it was a journey worth taking. As the Defiance engaged its faster-than-light drive and began the trip back to Earth, Captain Chin looked out at the stars and wondered what other challenges awaited humanity among the cosmic community they had just joined. Whatever came next, she was confident that humanity would face it the same way they had faced the Confederacy, with courage, determination, and the hard-earned wisdom that true strength comes from knowing when to fight and when to build something better.